These rules are a combination of advice that I'd give INFPs, but also things that you can learn from them, i.e., rules that INFPs would benefit from and advocate. So it's a mixture of both. Number 1. Leverage the outsider's perspective. The extent to which INFPs find themselves in this role of outsider is probably overstated, mainly because they often have exceptional people skills, so can get along with almost anyone. However, it's still an archetypical position that they will find themselves in, and a problem they will encounter throughout their lives. For some INFPs, it can feel like a perpetual state of being. Most areas in life are standardized and systematic, which doesn't suit INFPs well. However, when you feel out of place in a situation, it gives you a fascinating vantage point on the people and the situation itself. A lot of INFP writers, artists, and creators seem to be observers of society and humanity, almost like they're not actually engaged in it. So, it's important to see your potential misfit status as an opportunity. Number 2. Create things. Any individualistic person should consider creating things. The first reason is simply because you'll be offering people a unique perspective through the things you make. You never know when that interpretation, perspective, or outlook is going to be valuable to the person consuming it. The second reason is that it's healthy for intuitive types to take something from an idea into reality, from the abstract to the concrete, to manifest an individual vision in the world. Pulling something from the secretive confines of your own imagination into the tangible realm will feel very rewarding, even if it's only you who sees the things you make. The third reason is that INFPs can often feel misunderstood by people. And as I've said before, there's a remarkable correlation between feeling misunderstood and never actually telling people enough to be understood by them. Creating things, be that writing, music, art, videos, in video games, your personal fashion, the language that you use conversationally, it can be really subtle things, will help you take these amorphous and intangible emotions and get them exorcised out, and very often will also help you organize them in a more linear way as well. Certain types often relate to making more sense in writing than they do verbally in real time. I think for the same reasons. When it's a thought or feeling that you have inside you, it's abstract and intuitive. It doesn't have to be verbal, for example. But when you concretize and crystallize it, in doing so, you force yourself to make those things more understandable, relatable, digestible to yourself as much as other people. Number 3. Don't wait for the perfect moment. There are certainly bad or wrong moments to take action in life, but there are rarely, if ever, perfect moments. So waiting for those is dangerous. This is applicable to INFPs because they typically don't take an extremely forceful and aggressive approach to life. They prefer instead to let life come to them, so to speak. So when they need to make big changes, sometimes they can struggle to pull the trigger and burst into action. Inertia is something that can plague them if they're not careful. So, if you're an INFP, sometimes you have to leap before you feel ready. Take action, even though it might not seem like the opportune moment. If something isn't unfolding organically for you, then it's okay to force the issue and push for things. Number 4. Follow your heart. Unless your heart is being an idiot. There is a place for ruthless pragmatism from time to time. Cold, dispassionate analysis, followed by detached decision-making, is sometimes required. Whether that is cutting someone out of your life, leaving a job, or taking on a job that you might not enjoy because it's more prudent, and so on. These are times where emotional detachment can be preferable. Your TE is there to serve your FI, so use it. Number 5. Structure, organize, and systematize your life. When you think of an INFP's lower functions, they are SI and TE. You could conceptualize a healthy type as one who integrates those functions. So for INFPs, that would mean emulating ESTJs in certain ways. This isn't going to be a sustainable way for them to exist, so they will need to dip into the ESTJ mode, is to focus on things that once done don't need to be revisited. These things include structuring your life in the right way, figuring out efficient ways to get tasks done, making use of life hacks, organizing your schedule, or using some app or software to do so. It's thinking about any tasks that you'll be doing on a regular basis and figuring out the quickest, simplest, and least energy-intensive way to get it done. It might seem alien at times, but investing in these things will pay off big time and long term for INFPs. Number 6. Uniqueness makes you stand out, but similarity allows you to connect. There is a beauty, and more importantly, a benefit, to simply being like everyone else at times. It's a big part of belonging and connection. Sometimes, it's essential to focus on what makes you, you. Other times, it's important to focus on what makes us, us. That sounded better in my head, but you get the idea. If you're too much of an individual, then it will be hard to find that connection and kinship. Luckily, INFPs are great when it comes to empathy, so realizing that we are all in the same shaky, proverbial boat won't be difficult for them. In the same way that the mainstream popularity of a thing can make it off-putting to get into, kind of like you're being too generic by engaging in it, sometimes INFPs can psych themselves out of simply going along with the group or the crowd. To do it mindlessly is always bad, but to intentionally avoid it brings problems too, so find a healthy balance. Number 7. Values without compromise are meaningless. This is a pretty simple idea, but it was expressed very poetically in the film Lincoln, and I'll read that quote out here in a bit. In this scene from the film, Lincoln is talking to Thaddeus Stevens and requesting that he be less radical so he doesn't scare off people on the other side of the political divide, worrying that his exceptionally moral stance against slavery was so radical that it could actually undermine getting progress towards it. Essentially, this is a pragmatist, Lincoln, talking to an idealist, Stevens. Although these concepts are represented in separate characters here, as we know, this conflict happens just as much between different parts of ourselves. A compass, I learned when I was surveying. It'll point you true north from where you're standing, but it's got no advice about the swamps and deserts and chasms that you'll encounter along the way. If in pursuit of your destination, you plunge ahead, heedless of obstacles, and achieve nothing more than to sink in a swamp, what's the use of knowing true north? Values and principles are like our true north. They represent who we'd like to be, who we ought to be, but rarely who we actually are. At some point on the road, if you want the road to lead somewhere worthwhile, you need to compromise. Number 8. Avoid perfectionism. Like the last point, in terms of the underlying idea, but is applied specifically to the things you're working on. People will say that creating something perfect is impossible. I'm not sure that I agree with that. Sometimes something just feels right, and you can't personally find fault with it. But it's simply not a sustainable thing to aim for, and can result in a lot of devaluing your own work and overly harsh self-criticism, neither of which are healthy or helpful. Number 9. Follow your aesthetic inclinations. This is very much something that people can learn from INFPs. They have an intuitive pull towards certain looks, vibes, aesthetics, and this individual sensibility is very subtle and well developed. It can pop up in many areas, from the way they speak, both verbally and in text form, the way they dress, their taste in general, the way they design their homes. It can be really small stuff, and often is. Little ways in which this unique taste pops up. I'll use a Tolkien quote to finish this point. I have always been seeking things of a certain tone and air, and not simple knowledge. Number 10. Don't always assume intent. INFPs, depending on their life experience, can sometimes see too much pain and hardship in the world to the point where it burdens them. Similarly, people's capacity for evil actions can feel equally burdening to them. But people are often malicious, more out of ignorance than intentionality. Unpleasantness is born more out of mistakes than malevolence, although the latter is of course still out there in abundance in the world. So, to avoid any potential falls into being misanthropic, it's good to bear this one in mind. Number 11. Sometimes the best way to help someone is to stop helping them. Sometimes, letting someone feel the consequences of their failures and mistakes will help them much more than shielding them from those things. In other words, sometimes people need tough love, so it's something that INFPs should make use of when the situation requires it. Number 12. Embrace the power of the present moment. A simple one to finish off on. Fantasyland is a glorious place, a useful place in fact, but as an intuitive, and in some ways as an introvert, learning to be grounded in the here and now will be the antidote to many worries and anxieties you'll experience in life. If you like this video, it helps it get pushed and shown to more people. Also, if you like the channel, feel free to subscribe as well. If you've done both of those things, then you will probably enjoy joining the Love Who Discord server as well. The link to that is below in the description of the video.